Well, good morning, good evening, and good night, my terrible listeners. You're tuned in to Terrible Sex with Naseem. I'm producer Dan, and each week I have the honor of bringing you registered nurse, aspiring sex educator, polyamory enthusiast, and true woman of the people, Naseem. She tells us stories, answers our questions, and helps us feel more comfortable around our world's infinite variety of sexuality. Send your questions, your comments, and especially your voicemails to Naseem. This show is best when you're involved. Contact info is on her website at terriblesexwithnaseem.com. Hey, Naseem.
Hi, Dan.
How's it going?
Oh, it's been a week. It's a lot has been going on. Yeah. I've been working a lot. And I ma- I made kind of a big announcement over the weekend.
Ooh.
In my personal life. We have this podcast where I talk very candidly about my polyamory and my sex life. But I'm not actually really out in my personal life.
Okay.
Like my family knows, but it's not something that we really talked about.
Right.
And over the weekend, I made the decision to post publicly on Facebook about my lifestyle. And I got a lot of positive feedback from people.
I saw a post of yours on the Facebook.
Yeah. But there's also been not backlash per se, but just some things that I've had to deal with and think about.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I didn't approach it in the best way. And so I'm kind of I've been doing a lot of introspection and thinking a lot about, how I could do things differently. And making sure that I'm maintaining positive relationships in my life and, just trying to be a, a better person with how I communicate with people. And
Okay.
that's just sort of been what's been going on.
Well, for the record, and I guess this is all on the record because we're recording all of this, I found that post to be totally reasonable, all about you and your own feelings and your own relationships, and quite frankly, about as benign a coming out post as one could post.
Yeah, I thought so too. I just think that maybe there were some people who weren't prepared, and I could have done a better job at preparing people for what I was about to say. And there's
These are people close to you.
Yes, people close to me, and I think that it's important to, it's one thing to be your true self and announce things and be and live your most authentic life. But it's also really important to consider how that may affect people. And not to say that you should hide or, change who you are, but just have some consideration. And I failed to do that. And to those people, if they're listening, they're probably not. But if they are, I'm sorry. I'm going to be saying a lot of sorries today. This is going to be kind of in my mind, a heavier episode than we normally have.
I don't know. YG last week was pretty heavy.
YG last week was very heavy, but he was also very charming and very funny.
What you're saying is this isn't going to be funny and charming?
Yeah, no, probably not. So if you are needing a pick-me-up this week, maybe skip it for later. But I also think it's really important, and it's something that has been weighing heavily on my heart and my mind for a very long time. Um, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about trying to be a better person and, do the right thing going forward in my life. And I have this podcast with you, and I give out advice, but I'm not perfect, and I I'm not now, and I certainly haven't been in the past. And I think I can speak for everyone when I say that I've made some mistakes, and I'm going to talk about one of those mistakes today.
Well, shit, let's go.
Yes. So, this is a hard one for me. So I was in college, and I had a pretty close-knit group of friends, in college. I did theater when I was an undergrad. That
You
was
should
actually
have
what my
you should have seen the way her eyebrow went up when she said, "I did theater."
Yeah, I was a theater kid in high school and in undergrad. That's actually what my first degree was in. Nursing was definitely a life change for me later on,
That's what all
in
actors do.
in adulthood. Yeah, yeah, we tend to, start off uh, doing something creative and following our passion. And then at some point, not everybody, but at some point, especially someone like me, was like, some stability would be nice. So let's become a travel nurse where I have a different contract every 3 months. Anyway, so I had a pretty close knit group of theater friends, and hung out with a group of women, and I spent a lot of time at their house. And I was at a party at their house this one night, and I believe it was my friend's birthday, and I think it was actually the night she had like a kink BDSM themed birthday party. And it was totally benign. There was like nothing going on. People just like dressed up in like leather, and we played spin the bottle. Like it was very,
Right.
very, very PG
Li
13, like very PG.
like a cartoon,
Um,
like, junior high version of, Kink Party.
yeah, and we were like 21 years old, but
Sure.
a junior high party where we like could legally drink. So, um, and I think it was the same night. We had a lot of parties at that house, so I could be blurring them together. And I used to spend the night at their house a lot, mostly because I was too lazy and too tired most of the time to walk the 3 blocks back to my place.
Well, it was a long
So,
walk.
yeah. So, I spent many a night on their living room couch. Um, and on this particular occasion, there were a lot of people over, and there was, a guy at this party, um and I didn't know him very well. I went to a very small school. Everybody kinda knew everybody, and I recognized him, and I knew his name, and we had run in similar social circles, but he, like, wasn't a personal friend of mine. He was like an acquaintance adjacent, kind of.
Okay.
And we are at this party, we're drinking, and I also wanna say, even though we had been drinking alcohol and maybe some other kinds of drugs were partaken at this party, that's not an excuse for what happened, okay? Um,
It never is.
it never
It
is,
often
and
is, but it never is.
it never is, but I'm just setting up kind of like the background.
I'm with you.
And this guy, um, and I start talking, and we end up on the couch together. And it's a little fuzzy for me exactly, like, how we ended up on the couch, but we end up laying on the couch next to each other, and, um, it's everybody is gone. It seems like everyone else has left the party. I There may have been, like, another couple people maybe passed out on the floor. My friends were upstairs in their bedrooms. It's nighttime, party's over, we're all crashed out. And I was feeling good, and I felt like this other person was also feeling good, and we were cuddling, and in my mind at the time. I was, again, not an excuse, but the person I was then was definitely someone who was very self-conscious and very much seeking the validation of men, and I didn't have the knowledge or the education or the self-esteem to understand that, like, one, I didn't need that, and two, just because I'm a f a woman doesn't necessarily mean that a man is going to want to have anything to do with me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it was
Sure.
very I thought, "Well, oh, all guys want this." So, I had a very, like, prepubescent, very immature view of sex and sexuality.
Most 21 year
And
olds do.
sure, yeah, and I thought, "Well, if I just throw myself at somebody, they're obviously gonna, like, want that." So, we're cuddling on the couch, and I got handsy with this person. And, like, they were kind of caressing me back, like, they had their hand on my hip and whatnot, but I went for it. I, put my hands down his pants, and we did not have sex. It was very much like groping under the blankets kind of a thing. And that was the extent of it. There was nothing more than that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it was consented to by this person. Um, Sorry.
Hey, take your time.
But I didn't realize that at the time. So it's the next morning. He's gone, or I left early, one of the two. And we go to we still had a meal plan at the college. So I go in for breakfast or something. And he's there in the cafeteria. And I think to myself, oh, this guy, I had a connection with him. It was, casual, it was fun, whatever. I'm going to go say hi and talk to him. And I think we're like at the omelet station or something. And I go up to him and I try to like joke around with him and say, hey, and like, what's up? And, have a casual, friendly conversation. And he is avoiding me. And I'm very confused by this. And then he just turns around and he slams his tray on the table. And he looks at me and he yells at me. He's like, don't come near me. Never talk to me again.
Whoa.
And I was so surprised by this. And I didn't understand what happened until I really thought about it. And w- I don't know for sure because I never spoke to him again. I wasn't going to pry. This person just like yelled at me in the middle of a busy cafeteria to like not go near him and never fucking talk to him again. So the last thing I was going to do was to try and talk to him again about it. So I was like, okay. He walked away. I went the other way and I thought about it and I'm like, I think I might have violated this person.
I wasn't there. But I can't imagine such an extreme reaction after a minor couch touchings.
But but I don't know what was going on in his head. I don't
Right.
know if he was, because I didn't know this person. I didn't know like what his relationship with sex was. I don't know what his background is, if he was religious, if he had certain feelings about sex, if he was even, maybe he was questioning his sexuality, maybe he was going to save himself, maybe like there's all of these things that could have been happening in his mind and in his feelings that I didn't know and didn't even think to ask. Um, and I I take great responsibility for that. And it's something that has weighed on me for the past 13 years. And I saw him around campus. I mean, this was the end of our time. So this was like the end of senior year. And we didn't really see each other, and I was not about to approach him.
Sure.
Absolutely not. And I was too ashamed of my actions to talk to any of our mutual friends about it. Um, there have been so many times where I have looked him up on Facebook and have wanted to like send him a message and apologize, but I just it's a thing, it's a scary thing to do. It's a scary thing to one to admit that you may have done something wrong, and it's also a scary thing to like you don't want to trigger a person. You don't want to like bring up something that was a potentially bad part of their past, and because I don't know if it affected him later on in life. I have no idea. And it's, it's not really for me to know. Like this isn't really about me. Like if I am a perpetrator in this, which it feels like that I am, if I'm a perpetrator, then it's not about me. Like he's the victim here and I shouldn't be interfering with his life. So it's always been something that I've just carried and I've never talked about because I didn't know how to talk about it, but I felt like this was in a way an appropriate platform to just say that like we I have made mistakes and I think a lot of us do make mistakes and it's important to own those mistakes and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. And if you haven't figured that out yet yourself, that's okay, but it's important to really think about them and how you're going to make better decisions going forward.
Totally. And frankly, for a 21-year-old new to sexual experiences, I don't think that you necessarily did anything wrong in this scenario. You
But if
it might you don't feel good because of the way he reacted the next day. And I'm not you're not off the hook. I'm no one to exonerate you of anything. But I don't think you did anything wrong. Now that you know what you know, you could have done things differently and better, and you know how to do things better moving forward by verbalizing consent. But you listed off like 50 things that could have been going through this dude's head at the time that would make him react that way the next day. Maybe the reason he reacted that way was because his girlfriend was 3 tables away from the omelet stand. Maybe that's why he was so upset. I don't know. You don't know. The only person that knows is him. But that seems like a pretty crazy reaction just from a mild hand job on a couch.
but the way I think about it though too is like imagine if it was the other way around. If if I was a man and he was a woman or he had done something like that to me, if he had
Sure.
groped me under the covers and I didn't say anything and then I blew up the next day, people would be there is definitely a double standard here when it comes to gender and sex and
I
when it comes to consent and violation.
Without a doubt.
Uh, and I think that's another important thing to address. Like, women can be perpetrators
Sure.
and men can be victims. And it's that's why I don't let myself off the hook.
Well, I just don't. It doesn't sound to me like you forced yourself on this individual, and that there was a power dynamic here that didn't allow this person to feel like they had the opportunity to say no, thank you. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I wasn't in the room. You're a powerful woman, and I know that without a doubt. But part part of that imbalance that you're referencing is, a power dynamic that doesn't seem to have been in play from your telling of the story or my understanding of your telling. Again, I'm not trying to get you off the hook. If you want to feel bad, you feel bad. But I also know that one of the things, I think one of the most important things about growing up, and I'm still doing it, uh, is, we learn how we don't want to treat people. We do things, we see the way that it affects people, even if we weren't intentionally doing that, doing something negative to someone else. It wasn't intentional, but it ended up negative to someone experienced that in a negative manner. Well, now you can learn how you don't want to do things next time. You can't travel back in time. You can't undo stuff, but you can be better next time. So stop just forcing your hands down people's pants on couches, Naseem. For fuck's sake.
Ugh.
You don't do that to people anymore.
That's true. You definitely don't do that to people
Let that
anymore.
be a
I
lesson
don't.
to all of our terrible listeners. Don't just go shoving your hands in pants to people on couches without express consent. Your life will be better. Take it from Naseem.
Take it from me. Don't do what I've done. Um yeah, so that I mean that's the story. That's it. It's a shorty, but I felt like it has been something I have carried with me for a very long time. And where else but to share this terrible story than here?
This truly is a terrible sex story. And and
Yes.
I could tell that you clearly have some real feelings about it. And uh I think that just proves that you're an empathetic individual. Um
Well, I certainly try to be.
and And honestly, man, like I I'm I'm willing to put money on his girlfriend being 3 tables away.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Um, it's funny, I wonder about this kid all the time. All the time. I wonder, like, what happened to him? And, like, he seems to be okay, but who the fuck knows? And, um, we had some mutual friends, and they're like, "I don't know what happened to him," and but I don't wanna, like, tell the whole, like, "Well, it's possible that I, like, assaulted this
Send him the
guy,"
link to
and
this episode, and then next week we'll have him on.
oh, yeah, like, okay.
Exclusive.
Exclusive. No, let's definitely not do that. But if he does stumble upon this, man, um, 1, I'm sorry, and 2, what the hell happened? Like,
And
that's
3, are you still with your girlfriend that was 3 tables away from the omelet stand?
you are convinced that that's what happened.
Like, look, I've made out with girls that after that, I didn't feel like I wanted to make out with them again. I have never been in a situation where I would have reacted that way the next day unless there was somebody around that I didn't want to know about that. I would still be a little smoother than like slamming my tray down and saying, "Don't ever talk to me again."
He was clearly upset. It didn't feel reactionary. It felt like desperation. Like he was truly I had hurt this person.
Well, he was desperate to not have his girlfriend find out.
Oh, who knows?
Who
Who
knows? But
knows?
take a little easy on yourself. You haven't done it since then because you learned something. So
True. And that's all we can
that's
do
all
is,
we can do.
and that's all, and that's why I share the story, even though it's hard and it's personal and I was so nervous. Um, because because we do make mistakes, and even if we don't understand them at the time, I want people to be able to learn. I mean, I hate to say this, it sounds so corny, but like to learn from me. That's why I tell the stories that I tell. The things that happen between in relationship is very complicated. It can be very awkward, and all we can do is to learn from them moment to moment and try and be better and to express ourselves authentically and honestly and um, have good relationship with people.
That's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
And just don't shove your hands down people's pants without express consent.
Don't shove your hands
Because who
down
knows
people's
what'll
pants.
happen in the goddamn omelet line.
Who knows? That's all I got.
It was good.
So,
It was good. It was it. I I I laugh at you a little bit because it seems like your feelings about this scenario seem much larger than it feels like I think they should be. But your feelings are yours and they're valid. And I hope you get to feel a little less pressure from this moving forward.
thanks, Dan.
And I hope it's okay that I laugh at you a little
It's always okay to laugh at me.
bit.
I'm a funny person.
Well, I appreciate you and all the things that you share and all your goddamn experiences.
Thanks. I'm glad that people give a damn and listen. Thanks, listener.
Heck yeah.
Couldn't couldn't be here without you.
No, we would be here, but it would be a lot harder to keep doing this show without anybody writing in, without anybody sending emails, without anybody giving us feedback. So thank you to all of our terrible listeners.
Yes. Speaking of which, do we have any listener questions this week?
Hell yeah, we do.
Excellent. Let's get to it.
Hey, Naseem, I love my partner. We're physically affectionate and are best friends. And at the beginning of our relationship, we were all over each other, like constantly. After dating 2.5 years, it just started decreasing to the point where I feel like sex is a chore. I can't come. Couldn't before either, but I still enjoyed myself. And I no longer get turned on by fantasizing about my partner. What do? I don't want to leave the relationship, and I love him so much. And an open relationship wouldn't be accepted by either of us. How do I get the attraction or spark back?
This is a super common thing. Because with familiarity, I don't want to say things get boring, but things become familiar and they
I'll
don't
say it, and
seem
things can
as
get boring.
because you know the person's body, you can anticipate, and it becomes you're still attracted to them, of course, but things become less exciting because they're not new. There's that. So we're all chasing dopamine to a certain degree, which is it's the neurotransmitter in our brain. It's like our pleasure
From
center.
here on out, we're just going
So
to call it the dragon.
okay, it's the dragon. We're chasing the dopamine dragon, and over time, like anything, you generally tend to need more of something to become excited by it. Um, and if you're with the same person for a really long time, um, it's no longer this new spark. Your brain's not lighting up in the same way as when it was a new relationship. And that's fine. That's completely normal. So how do you get over that hump without, expanding into different partners? which, is an option. But if that's not going to work for your relationship, you can try things like experimenting with what you do in the bedroom. You can experiment like with watching different styles of pornography together. You can try things that are new that you haven't done before, or maybe you were like a little afraid to do before. Like, I don't know if you're into more vanilla sex or if you want to try some kink aspects out. Do some research. Always do your research. Whenever you're trying anything new, get some good literature. Um, Also, it's not always about the sex that can be what is exciting. If there's a trip that you've wanted to go on and you haven't done it yet, go take a trip. Go do an activity that's new. Go axe throwing. Do something that will physically bond you together that's not sexual, because that will maybe you can learn something new about your partner that will open your eyes to them and you'll see them in a new way. And it's like you're dating all over again. You're getting to know this person and it can light up that dopamine all over again. And then you can find them more physically exciting. Um, have the conversation. Be honest. Say, hey, look, I love you. I love our relationship. Intimacy is not what it used to be. What do you think would make you feel more satisfied? And talk about that. I really think, go on dates with each other where it's the intention is to discover something new about the other person. Because it's not just about sex. It's about you having a relationship that is going to continue to be exciting in every aspect for the duration. And that will bleed over into the bedroom. Dan, you've been married for a while. Do you have anything to
Oh
add?
Christ, it's boring. No, no, that was an absolute joke. Um, and you know, I think if sex feels like a chore, take sex off the table. You don't have to do sex. Like, uh, and by that I mean like PNV traditional sexual activities. If that feels like a chore, stop doing it for a while. Just try some mutual masturbation. Try, uh, I don't know, just oral sex for a while. And if you're not coming from sex and that seems to be problematic and part of why it feels like a chore, then find a way to come, find a way to get your partner involved. And just if it feels like a chore and if it feels boring, don't keep doing the same thing and pretending it's okay. And 2.5 years
Yes.
is a long time. Is the rest of the relationship great? Then, it's worth figuring out this patch because 2.5 years isn't much when it comes to a whole lifetime. But if after 2.5 years, this is boring and some other parts of your relationship are getting boring and this doesn't feel like a thing that you want to do for a long time, well, maybe it's time to move on. It's okay. You had a good run at 2.5 years, and you can end the relationship if you want to. You don't have to stick around. But if the rest of the relationship is worth it, then don't just keep doing what's clearly not working for you.
Yes. Excellent advice.
You too. Hey, Naseem, I need some reassurance. I had sex with my girlfriend and finished inside her. I just need some reassurance that she will not get pregnant. She used Plan B an hour after. Her period is also in a week. I just want to make sure I'll be okay.
I mean, Plan V is incredibly effective. Um, and I'm assuming she was not on any other form of birth control. Plan B is incredibly effective. It has like a 90, I want to say it's like a 98% effectiveness rate. 95 or 98, which is, there is room for error, but It's pretty damn good. Um, I can't give you 100% reassurance.
Hey,
I'm going to be honest
listen,
with
you're on
you.
a podcast. Just tell them. Just tell them it's totally fine. Everything's going to be okay. Let's move on. It's enough of this.
Yeah. There's a chance, but it's a very small one. I mean, you're talking to a person who has an implant and that is 99% effective. Like, I don't ovulate, and I still worry every time I have unprotected sex that I'm gonna get knocked up. So, and if I think that it's fine, you're probably A-okay.
Yeah. Also, Plan B is
If you
great as a Plan B, but why don't you guys work together and figure out a Plan A?
Yeah, absolutely. It cannot be Plan B should not be used as standard form of birth control. Uh, if you're gonna continue these kinds of activities, plan ahead, and either if she can get on some contraception, great. If not, use a condom.
Hey, Naseem, where do you prefer your male sexual partner to come? If you're being sexual with a guy and you're on birth control meds, where do you prefer where do you most prefer him to ejaculate when he comes during P&V penetration sexual lovemaking?
P&V penetration sexual lovemaking. Can we
Yes,
just call it
yes,
that from now
yes.
on?
That's the name of this episode.
Um, so
I love that.
as Dan's reading the question, I'm just like covering my face because it really, for me
My
personally,
my mother-in-law is a religious listener of this podcast, and that's all I can
no,
think of. That's all I can think
no,
of
she's not.
as I'm reading that question. God bless her. Thanks for listening.
Oh,
I love
oh
you, and I'm
God, is she
sorry.
really? Um, I It depends. It depends on the moment. A lot of times it depends on the moment. Um, I I I don't know why I'm, like, being so dodgy with this question because I'm such an open person. I really like facials, okay? Um, I mean, does it burn when it gets in your eyes? Sometimes. Is it a little gloopy? Yes. But there's something very satisfying about getting jizz in your face. I don't know why. Um, but it's like if I'm having like a really emotional connection with someone, like if I'm feeling like really emotionally tied to someone where it's less fucking and more like ugh, love making. I hate that word. But like if it's really like truly like an emotional experience, like I prefer them to come inside me.
All right.
Yeah, but if it's like just hot and heavy and just like dirty and like let's get nasty, like basically anywhere on my body. Like I really like it on my tits and I really like it on my face.
Next question.
Hey, you asked.
I loved it. I loved there couldn't have been a better answer. Hey, Naseem, I have a problem. It's the first time I've ever asked about this. I have a pornography addiction. I jerk off mostly in the shower, or on the toilet, or in bed. After every time I nut, I feel like fucking shit and I want it to change. I'm currently talking to a very beautiful girl and I don't want this to ruin our relationship. Do you have any tips? Thank you.
If it's truly a pornography addiction that you are concerned with, there are some very informative, educated, and skilled mental health professionals. There are therapists that are, um, their whole thing is sex addiction and pornography addiction. If it is something that is truly concerning to you, I would seek out a mental health professional to, and I'm not saying that there's anything, not to say that there's something that you have a mental health condition if you like pornography. I'm saying if pornography is causing an impact, a negative impact on your life and your relationships, then seeking counseling is your best avenue.
That's absolutely true. And I think what the reason I think that that's correct. I'm not telling you why you gave this answer. I'm telling you why I agree with this answer is, he wrote that every time he does it, he feels like fucking shit and he wants it to
Yeah.
change. So there's nothing wrong with sitting at home and jerking off all day if that's what you love to do. You could do that. I did it when I was 14 almost all the time when I wasn't in someone else's presence. And it was the best.
But you're right. If you're having negative feelings about yourself and a negative self-image and you are having um concerns with how this is gonna affect future relationships, it sounds like it's something you
Right, dude.
need to talk to a
Get a
therapist
therapist.
about, and there's no shame in
No,
that.
man. Let me tell you what, I see a therapist weekly and it's the best. I have been doing it for a few years now and my life is so much better for it. And now I don't jerk off all the time.
Only when
That
necessary.
that part was kind of a joke, but um no, man, there's nothing wrong with seeing a therapist. And if you're compelled to do a thing that makes you feel like shit, well, go see a therapist and work it out with them. That's the best thing that you can do. And if you know, I don't know how old you are. If you don't have access to your own resources, there's nothing wrong with talking to your parents and saying, "Hey, I'm going through some stuff and I would love to see a therapist." If you can do that, do it. If you don't, if you can't talk to your parents, you don't even have to tell them why. Just say, "I'm going through some shit, mom. Get me a therapist." Um,
Yeah.
and if you don't have that as a resource, talk to your school counselor. Tell don't again, you can say, "Hey, school counselor, how do I see a therapist?" Um, there are resources available. Um, use them. Get thee to a therapist because they really are worth their weight in gold and totally worth the time. And they're going to help guide you to goals that you want to set in your life. And if the goal you
As
want to set, it's not even to stop jerking off. If your goal is to not feel like shit when you're done jerking off, that's a totally worthy goal and totally worth taking the time to work on yourself to do.
and like I said earlier, there are therapists who specialize in this kind of work.
Totally.
And so there's you may be nervous and have certain feelings about it, but they will treat you with dignity and respect and will not shame you for these kinds of feelings that you're having.
Absolutely. And it has nothing to do with jerking off and everything to do with you feeling like shit after you do a thing that you're compelled to do. So, yeah, get a therapist. It'll help. Hey, Naseem. Lately, it's been difficult to have a hard erection unless my girlfriend starts talking to me like an absolute slut and her being in different fantasy scenarios. Can you help me out? I'll have like a half chub until she starts talking like that. Then I become hard as hell. That's it.
I don't see the problem here.
Right.
I mean, help you out how? Do you It sounds like you have discovered a fetish, and that's okay, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. You like what you like, and maybe it's something that you can explore further. Um, I say lean into
Yeah,
it.
man, the beautiful thing about this question is that the girlfriend's already doing what you need her to do. That she's into it and she's
Yeah.
willing to go there for you. So good on you and good on her. You just make sure you return the favor. Ask what she likes and what she wants to explore. So scratch her back too. Hey Naseem, I'm uncomfortable with blowjobs. I want to give my boyfriend a blowjob and get turned on by the idea of it, but when I even look at his cum, I gag. Can you tell me some small tips that can help me get comfortable with it? I have past trauma, which I think is the reason I get sick at the sight of cum. I really want to give him one. Please help.
I think, uh, addressing your trauma is going to be the first step, because if you ignore that, it's never going to be something that you can enjoy fully. Um, I know this episode is, like, very much on the serious note, but, uh, I think it's true. I think that if I don't know what your trauma was, um, but addressing it and, maybe you might need to talk to a counselor, um, and kind of deal with that. Um, Also, if you don't wanna give a blowjob, if it grosses you out, don't do it. Don't do anything you don't wanna do.
Yeah. Or if you do want to give a blowjob, which you said turns you on, or the idea of it turns you on, but you just get sick at the sight of cum, well, don't finish the blowjob on your face or in your mouth or anywhere you can see it.
Yeah, you can yeah, oh, that's great. Start the blowjob, but he doesn't have to finish from the
Right.
blowjob. There are other things you could do, like, if he's about to come, get off of him, and he can finish himself and clean himself up, and, then he can return the favor, or he can start with you and, go back to him. But the blowjob does not have to be the beginning and end of the story.
Totally.
You can start going down on him and have a good time for a while, and then maybe you have, P and V sex, um, as, like, the finisher. That's perfectly acceptable
Yeah.
too.
But if
You can have he can have the blowjob without it being, like, the whole piece of the puzzle, the main event. But I do recommend that you maybe address the cum situation. Although, cum as much of a cum slut as I am, like, it is kind of gross. Like, I understand, like, not like, I understand not loving it. Like, it gets like, the texture, the viscosity, it can get pretty nasty pretty quickly once it's outside of the body, so, like, I get it. Um, so not loving it is also just, like, fine. Like, that's okay to not like it. Plenty of people don't like cum. Um, but I've got nothing else.
Nah,
I don't know how to finish my sentence.
I think that was a plenty strong finish, Naseem.
At least someone's finishing strong.
Right. And with that, should we call it an episode?
I think so. We're at 50.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking around if you did for this heavier episode. Um and I appreciate all of your words, Dan. And if you feel like you're in a situation where you have made a mistake in the past, don't be afraid to reach out, and it's okay.
Who, me? Sounds like, are you expecting an apology from me right now?
I was talking to our
Oh.
listeners, Daniel.
Oh. What the fuck did I do to you, Naseem?
Just telling me to show up to recording sessions on time.
Just be there at 8:30. That's all I ask.
I was trying to have a real, like, touching and meaningful sign off. It didn't work. So,
I just thought I was getting yelled at.
no,
Well, I'm sorry I made it about me again.
that's okay.
But this is a great episode. I liked it, and I appreciated your vulnerability. I thought it was mildly endearing.
Mildly, yeah.
Naseem wants all her terrible listeners to know that although she is a medical professional, she is not your medical professional. This podcast is not medical advice. If you want medical advice, please seek out your very own healthcare provider. Terrible Sex with Naseem is part of the Terrible Podcast Network.